Okay guys, welcome back to Basics episode 27. I'm teaching my lovely fiance Jess how to trade. We just got over the last statistical one. We got through it. It was hard. These ones I think will be a little easier. But again, this is episode 27, so if this is your first one, go back on our channels, which are both right here, and go take a look and start at episode 1, what is a stock, technical analysis, fundamental, and now we're at statistical analysis. With Jess is going to be starting some of her own videos, and you can check her out here as well. And again, if you're seeing this on my channel, hers always has the next episode up, so go over there and check it out. Perception biases, and I want to thank Optuma, who has been training me to take my CMT, and the CMT organization, because these actual biases and a lot of these quotes that I'm pulling are from them, so I just want to source them and credit them and say thanks. I thought this was the coolest part of when I took my CMT, to be honest. Last episode, we talked about how the brain doesn't work in a purely mathematical, logical way, but trading is a very mathematical, logical profession. So we have to reconcile the difference, and to do that, we need to go through all of the biases that every human being has, how they would affect this, and then how we get over them. Make sense? So these are the biases that we're going to go over that kind of spring from what I taught you in the last episode. First is saliency bias, which essentially means, this is the actual definition from Wikipedia, but it basically means that we value certain things higher based off of how often that they've happened. So if an event occurred recently, we think the probability of that event occurring again is much higher than an event that occurred a long time ago. So for example, if I said, hey, which is more likely? We get another breakout of some global pandemic, or we put a man on the moon?
Are you at?
Yeah.
Honestly, I think man on the moon.
Okay. Well, I made this up. Might not be the best example, but it's usually whatever's occurred more frequently. So for example, right after 9/11, the terrorist attack, you remember that for the next, may not remember, but for the next month, every time there was anything with a plane or a helicopter or anything in the news, everyone freaked out because they thought it was another terrorist attack. And here in Nova Scotia, we actually had a mass shooting recently. And ever since then, everybody's been on edge that there's going to be another event like that, right? There's been a lot of alarms sent and things like this. And it's because even though the probability of something happening isn't any higher, because it happened recently, it's higher in our head. I put a trading example with each one to make sure I'm always grounding it back into why I'm teaching you. Like a crash happened recently, right? The market crashed like 30% when the whole pandemic thing started. Now, every time there's a sell-off in the market, when you go on social media, they're talking about this crash is going to be just as worse as the next one, even though a probability of a crash now is not any higher than it was before the last one. People weighted higher. And if it's been 10 years since the last crash, everyone thinks that there's no way there can be a crash. So even though time has no bearing, you can see it has, in our heads, it does. Okay, so the next bias. So again, you can see how that bias would be really detrimental to trading. And one of the main reasons that that last bias really hurts people is because they'll take a trade, and that trade works out well, and then they think the next trade's going to work out well, so they trade it bigger, right? And then the next trade's going to work out well, and they're going to trade it bigger, even though these are completely independent events, right? None of them has any impact on the one before. But in our head, we think it does. So when we're doing bad, we think we're going to continue to do bad, and we may change our behaviors in a way that will do bad. If we're doing well, we're going to think we're unstoppable and maybe take more risks than we should. So next is framing bias. So again, here is the actual definition, but framing bias is more about how we change our perception of what's going to happen based off of how something is framed or worded to us. The same thing named differently can be different to each person. I'll give you a little bit of an example here. So there's a disease threatening 600 people. We have program A, right? Has the effect of saving 200 people, right? Program B has a 1/3 chance that 600 people will be saved and a 2/3 chance then no one will be saved. Most people, again, pick program A, whereas mathematically, it shouldn't matter.
Right.
Right? But it's because it's framed as you're saving people. Now, look at this is another kind of wording of it. It may make more sense. So you have a decision A. If I'm going to, for sure, give you $240 or give you 25% chance of making $1,000, most people will choose option A. Option B, mathematically, will pay you more money, right? Most people. And this is what we were talking about with the framing. Now, this is where it gets interesting. For sure, I'm going to take $750 from you. Guaranteed. Or 75% chance I take $1,000 from you. 25% chance, 1 in 4, I don't take anything from you. Most people get they want to do the sure thing when it comes to gains. They instinctively want to do the risky thing when it comes to losses. So if I say, listen, we'll play a game. Either you're gonna hand me $750 out of your account, or we'll play that game below. There's a little inkling in you that says, I'm gonna play the game. Maybe I won't lose anything.
Yeah.
But you don't want to play the game when it's a gain. And that's super important because people in trading will then get riskier on losses. If they're up on a trade, they get super protective and they say, you know, I don't want to lose those gains. I'm up $1,000. I want to take that. I want to. Whereas the other way, they say, well, I'm down $1,000. Let me just see. Maybe we'll come back.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And it is the exact wrong thing. Right? And Jesse Livermore, did I do the Livermore quote? Yeah, people being scared of losing gains or hopeful that gains will turn into losses. And it's just wrong, and we all do it. Anchoring. So anchoring is kind of similar to saliency, where it's not that we forget old things that happened a long time ago. We don't think that they're that big, but we rely way too much on information. And again, these are things that we know that every human being on earth has these problems, right? And we're trying to go away through them. And this, I think, is the perfect example of this. Websites, stores, everyone does this all the time. Where right away your brain went to $300 or only $15 a month. So this is the anchor. They anchor you with this really high price for this thing. And then they give you a way cheaper option. You didn't even see the free option, did you?
No, I didn't.
Right?
Yeah.
So we all have these bias, and you can go to almost any website on earth, and a lot of them are set up like this. And if you go to stores, they do the same thing, where they put the really expensive thing at the front of the aisle, and then they drop it down in price, and then you pick up that one. Right? So it's a loss leader. Again, everyone does this. Oh yeah, I didn't know if you'd like this, but I put this in. So we were out drinking one night, and I pick up Jess, coming home drunk. And
seriously,
we pull into McDonald's.
Seriously.
And she tells the guy, she's like, I'd like a chicken sandwich. And he goes, yeah, I can do that. It's like 2 a.m. She's like, yeah, I can do that for you, but it's going to take a while. So Jess's anchoring bias had her remember, yes, I can get chicken. And then as that whole it's going to take a while thing materialized, she got more and more and more and more mad. An example in trading, I have a few here.
You get mad.
You got mad.
I was hungry.
You got mad. So the anchoring, there's 2 major things that this happens in trading. One is you value your initial setup higher than what's actually happened. So you see a nice bull flag and you take it and you're like, okay, I'm going to take this bull flag. But then something changes in the pattern. But you're still weighting that initial piece of information way higher, right? And then the other thing is you do it when it comes to setups. Maybe you run a back test and you say, oh, this is going to make me about 20% a year on average. So you anchor that information, but as a strategy starts to degrade over time, you don't act, you don't change because of that initial piece of information. Last but not least, sunk cost bias. So a sunk cost is just a cost that has already occurred and cannot be recovered. Here's one, for example, right? You go to a movie, the movie sucks, we've already paid, you sat there for an hour. Both that time and that money are sunk costs. And people do really dumb things when it comes to sunk costs. So another example, I don't know if I put it or not, is the old, I've already had a chocolate bar, might as well just have 10. Right? It's this sunk cost.
Sounds all right to me.
This sunk cost problem, right? Whereas time and money. I've already lost a bunch on this trade. Let's see what happens, right? You're basically saying the loss, I'm just internalizing it.
I've done that in my paper trades a lot, actually.
Right? Just see what happens.
Yeah.
Right? Or the other one, and this is the kind of hidden one that people don't see, is I've spent a lot of time and research on this trade. Therefore, it has to be right because you're valuing that, even though it's just you make the decision and whatever happens, happens. So again, the first step and the next video will be the last one of this. It's going to be really short. It's probably going to be like 5 minutes of the rest of these biases. And then after that, we're going to talk about how we're going to use statistics to overcome them. So again, I wanted to set up how our brains suck and then why we use statistics and technical analysis so that we're not falling into these biases. We're building hardcore rules that kind of keep us out. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right, guys. See you in the next one.